All right, this is awesome. Adam has given us his approval, his thumbs up. This thing's ready to go out the door for final. He wanted one small change that I'll show you right now. He's been looking at our images and he just decided just off the cuff to throw the shoe back down and light it and catch some new shadows, and I think it looks really cool. So here's our new shadow. I think that's a huge improvement. It creates a lot more speed and just a cooler shape overall. Now, since we already had our shadow broken out as a separate element, I was able to just duplicate all the work. So the values in the shadow and the color are all the same. I just basically changed the mask and I extracted the mask just the same way I did the previous one that you could see earlier. Here's the sort of scratch layer that I used for it. I used the content aware to remove the shoe and pulled a channel mask from for the shadow. So that's in there. It looks really cool. The last thing that we need to do is to redo the high pass, and since we've got that separate too, that's a piece of cake. And since we saved that as a separate layer, that's easy. I want to strike. All right, I'm going to duplicate everything up to this new layer, convert to a smart object. And just drag the smart filters onto that. Drag the mask down, set it to, we can see here it was overlay at 80%. Overlay 80%. So final files, what are you going to send to the client? You don't want to send your working file, as we talked about before. That's your file. What I generally do is send out flat files to the client. I'll usually save them out as JPEGs, which you might be surprised by, but JPEGs at large physical pixel dimensions, at a compression of 10 or above, any sort of data loss is virtually imperceptible to the eye, and JPEGs will have a pretty manageable file size that's good for agencies and designers to use and to be able to email around to each other. So that's a nice format to use. In addition to that, an extra bonus you might want to give your client, and often they'll ask for this, is a layered file. Now, even in this case, you're not going to send them your working file. You're going to need to prep a layered file for them, and I'll show you how to do that now. It takes a little bit of additional work, so make some time for this at the end so that you're not right up against your deadline and you don't have time to figure out how to make a layered file. So when you're setting up your layered file for your client, what you want to do is make sure that you've got everything super tidy. You don't want to leave anything that they can mess up later. So you don't want to have stuff blended or any of your high pass or grain layers on top. You need to get those all organized. I'll go through that right now. I basically want to give them the shoe, the shadow, and the background as three separate elements so they can turn them on or off, even move them around a little bit. Right, so underneath the shoe, I've still got the shoe baked into the high pass, so I'm gonna redo that high pass. I also wanna make sure my high pass is underneath my grain layer because I don't wanna be sharpening or exacerbating grain. So I'll show you how we've done this before, but we're gonna do it again. Recreate the high pass, merge the layers up, convert to a smart object, copy the smart filters on, copy the mask on, set it to, what do we have it set on? Oh, that was on overlay. We can do that here. Overlay is a bit harsh. And what I'm going to do is dump this into the mask. That way when I turn the mask off, we've got this clean orange background. So I'm going to ditch all this shadow work, ditch that old high pass. I'm going to duplicate these grain layers into the shadow group and then put them below the shadow, and then duplicate the orange and the little grad I did up into the shadow group. That way I have a pixel base for the shadow group and I can flatten it and apply the layer mask. Now I'm going to flatten the whole background and we're good. Oh, let's flatten the flares into the shoe by hitting Command E. That way everything is nice and tidy. Your client has a layered file that they can use to move around. Yeah, they can't move much of it around, but if they need to run type behind it or use it in a layout, they can. So let's save that out as a layered TIFF and send it off to Adam. So that's it. We are completely done. We don't have any more feedback. Final files are going to be sent off. We've created a spectacular image working with a photographer, and you've seen my entire process here. I didn't leave anything out. We had 2-3 rounds of comments with the photographer, and that is usually the minimum that we'll get from a photographer. So that is kind of testament to the process here, that we're working so efficiently that we were able to get so much done for first round that we really didn't have a lot to talk over or to change or to fix. We didn't show Adam any glaring errors that he had to waste his time looking at and telling us to fix. We followed these steps one by one, and we're able to achieve a result where later changes happened really, really quickly. We're able to turn them around in just a matter of hours and get that right back in front of the photographer for him to respond to. Because if you can keep the process moving as fast as possible, you're going to give the photographer or client that sense of comfort that you're not toiling over the image. And the less time you give them in between rounds, the more familiar they are with the image, and kind of the more gentle they're going to be with their feedback, I think, because they're going to just be more in the headspace and more in the process of you creating the image and making continual progress. If you give them a lot of time in between rounds, a lot of times it's almost like they're looking at the image brand new again, and some real trouble can happen from that. So setting it up in this fashion where we're totally able to respond quickly to changes is a huge strength that you can see from going through this process from the beginning all the way to the end, from client brief all the way to final file delivery. You now have every step laid out for you, so you can see exactly how a commercial retoucher does this work end to end and not leave anything up to chance.